Why, hello everybody from Rosebud Art and Soul Designs. How are you guys doing today? Thank you for joining me on this tutorial today. We will be doing our paintings of the Oh Holy Night Sled. If you guys are interested in receiving some updates from me today, please text me the word join to 866-818-9002. Again, you're going to be texting the word join to 866-818-9002. When you do text me, you will receive an automatic 15% off discount code when you visit my website, rosebudartandsouldesigns.com. Actually, it's just rosebudartandsoul.com. So we're going to be getting ready to paint the Oh Holy Night Sled. So here is the example that we're going by that I painted just the other day. Let me just turn it to the side a little bit so you guys can get the full view in the camera. Okay, sorry if you have to tilt your head a little bit. So that's the full view of what we're painting for today. So when you receive this sled, you're going to receive it fully assembled, but I have it disassembled right now. So it is a wooden piece. It is already pre-traced on there for you guys. So you guys will be able to see all of the designs. I have two of the same size on the railings. I just have to get the second piece. So just give me a second to grab that piece. Sorry, just trying to organize everything. I have the same piece here. I'm just going to grab the second piece. All right, so I am starting off with the Royal Navy Blue from Deco Art. So what I'm going to do is pour a little bit out on my paint palette here. Again, I'm just using a paper plate, simple. I'm using my larger flathead brush. So I'm using my flat brush. Just washed it, making sure it's nice and clean. I'm going to dip a little bit into my paint, meaning just loading up my brush. So I want to put on a thin layer of paint. Do not go too crazy with the paint. And you can actually paint directly over the words and the outlines because it will show through the painting as you guys are painting, since it's kind of etched into the wood. So I'm going to paint this about a quarter down on the wood. Again, making a thin layer. If your paint's a little thick, just add a little bit of water to your brush and you should thin it out just a little bit, since this is acrylic paint. Acrylic paint is a water-based paint, so it will be able to water down just a little bit. So again, I'm just adding a very light layer. Okay. Once you are done, I'm going to then add my Deco Art Matte Metallic color pewter. I'm going to squeeze a little bit of that out onto my palette. So this has more of a silver shimmer, and you're going to come down to a ground line. You're going to see where the ground line hits underneath the tree. I want to blend it in. So when I first apply this paint, it's going to apply into the, like, two separate colors when I first apply it. So I'm just adding a thin layer. So you're going to see the two different colors, and I'm just like, what's the blend? I'm going to go up and then come back down. And I'm just blending the two colors together. Again, adding a thin layer, not too thick. We don't want to have a mush of paint on top of this. We want this to be able to dry. Okay, coming down to the ground line and just painting. Okay, once I get in all of my spots, make sure I got all the crevices in. You can still see the outline through the paint. I'm just going back over and making sure it's all blended in. Okay, I'm going to move that over to the side because I want to paint the other pieces of the sled. So I'm actually going to start off with a pewter. So I'm not even like adding any colors. I didn't even wash my brush yet. I'm going to start off with the pewter brush. One minute. So let's start off with the pewter. On the bottom, I'm going to add it up. And very similar to what we did with the sled, I'm then going to add the navy and do that ombre effect of the pewter into the navy. You guys can choose whatever color I have given you on the palette. So again, thank you for choosing this art kit. I hope you guys are enjoying it. So again, I'm just adding the pewter. And then I'm adding the navy. And I'm going to kind of blend that up and down. And then I'm going to do the same thing to the second railing. Also, make sure you guys are protecting your surface before you actually physically paint. Alright, so I'm going to do the same thing. I'm starting with the navy first since that was on my brush. I'm going in the opposite direction. So again, I'm starting with the navy, bringing it down halfway. And then I'm going to add the pewter and blend that in. And then for the top part, let me just make sure this is all blended. Then for the top part, and just make sure you guys are painting on the right side. You guys notice that on one side it looks a little burnt. That's the wrong side. Just turn it around to the lighter side of the side we're painting on. On this side, I'm just going to make this fully navy blue because I'm going to add snow to it later when I make my sled. And I add the snow to my sled, I'm going to add snow to this one as well. There you guys go. So those now I'm pushing those to the side and bringing back my sled. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to add the white to it. Alright, so just washing off my brush, make sure it's nice and clean from all the blues, and I am going to be working with white. Drying it off on my paper towel. What I like to do is make sure I'm pushing my brush up against the bottom of my water bowl or cup to make sure I get that out. I'm using the Snow White from Deco Art, which is titanium white. What I'm going to do is turn my slide upside down so you guys can see how I'm painting, because you don't get the full view with this camera. And I'm just going to start adding the white all the way up to the line. And a nice thin layer. Again, I have not changed my brush. I'm still working with the big flat brush. So most of this painting can be all done with one brush, which is totally amazing. And before this dries, I'm not even washing off my brush. I'm going to take a little bit of the navy blue. I'm going to add some lines with the navy blue. And what we're going to do is give some texture to the snow. So then I'm going to dip it back into the white and then blend this all in. And it kind of looks like you have some movement and some wind texture going through the snow and some hills and so forth. And it gives a little bit more dimension. When this dries, if it's too blue for you, guys can go back over with a little bit more white. I'm just adding a little bit more white here just to get that through. Okay, I'm going to rinse off my brush. And the next part is we're going to start our trees. Alright, you can still see the lining of the trees. You can see them here on the video. So hopefully you'll be able to see them as you guys are painting them. I'm using a dark green, which is the dark Hauser green. Put a little bit on my palette, still using the same big brush. You can paint in the trees how you see them and just fill them in first if you want to. That's perfectly fine, but we're going to use a technique where we're going to give these trees a little bit of a texture. So we want them to physically look like this tree. So I'm pouncing my brush up and down. All right, I'm pouncing it. I'm going outside the line to give some branches outside that line. So don't be afraid to, you don't have to stay inside the lines. So you know I'm just pouncing and pouncing. And we're going to keep doing this all the way across. I'm going to turn my brush sideways as I'm working and bring some of those branches down to the bottom. So it's overlapping the snow area as well. And I just keep on pouncing. Again, this is the dark green. So it's called Dark Hauser Green or Hauser Dark Green by Deco Art. Again, there's some more trees over here onto the right hand side. I'm going to do the same thing and just pounce and pounce and pounce. Adding a little bit more paint to my brush as I go along. Turning my brush too, so to help give those branches and help them stick out. Perfect. What I'm going to do next is I'm just adding a little bit more green to fill in the spots. What I'm going to do next is not even wash off my brush. I'm going to start using the lamp black. With the lamp black, I'm going to add some to my palette. I'm going to tap my brush in it, but I'm going to offload it. Offloading it means I'm tapping it in and then tapping in an empty spot on my palette so that there's not too much paint on my paintbrush. I'm just going to tap in random spots on my trees. This is to help to give a little bit more of that dark dimension in between the leaves and the branches of the trees. I'm going to do this to each one. All right, I'm not going too fast because I kind of want to define them a little bit. When you start going too fast, it kind of mushes all together. So I'm tap, tap, tapping. To each one. All right, so again, not washing off my brush. The next color I'm going to be using is a lighter green, and that's going to be holly green. All right, I'm going to add a little bit of holly green to my palette. As you can see here, so I'm just doing it to the big tree, not adding it to all the trees. And again, just tapping it only on the big tree in certain spots. All right, I have to shake my paint. It didn't come out good. I'm kind of doing the same thing. I'm kind of adding it to my brush and then offloading it a little bit, so it'll take off a little bit so I don't have too much of that on, because we don't want big splotches. So I'm just going to make sure it's offloaded. And then we're going to wait for that to dry. Next, we're going to work with the star and then the Oh Holy Night. But first, I'm just going to add a little bit more of the dark green back to these trees because I feel like I put too much black on them. I'm just going back over with just a little bit of the dark greens. Alright, so then I'm going to use a smaller brush. I think I'm going to actually use, so the primary yellow is the color we're using. I'm going to use a small brush. Probably my liner brush might be best. We're just going to fill in the star. Alright, take your time, because we're still waiting for everything else to dry, so you guys can take your time. And just fill in the star. Alright, and then I'm washing my brush off, still with the liner brush. Now be careful when you start doing Oh Holy Night. You kind of want to take your time. Not everybody has a steady hand. So just take your time. I'm taking my time. Sometimes lettering is hard, and especially now that we're tracing, it can be just a little bit harder. I'm carefully lining. I know lettering can be tricky. As you guys can see, I'm taking a little bit of paint at a time. I'm not adding a lot of paint. I don't want to rush this process too much. Okay, so I am taking my time. Alright, so as you guys are doing this and taking your time, remember to breathe. Sometimes we like to hold our breath as we're doing lettering. Alright, we don't have to hold our breath at all. Again, I'm taking a little bit of paint at a time and doing this. As the paint comes off my brush, I'm taking just a tiny bit more. I don't want to overload it because I don't want to gloop it on and then mess up my lettering. So I'm taking a little bit of paint and taking my time filling in. And again, if you don't, since we painted the blue on top of it, if you don't want to write "Oh Holy Night" and you want to write something else in its place, go ahead. These are your sleds. I'm not telling you what you have to and not have to paint. So you guys can paint actually whatever you like. So I'm not telling you what to paint and what not to paint. Okay, very good. So we have one finished the T, and then I'm gonna dot my I. So the way I dot my I is I use the back of my paintbrush and I put the paint on the back and just dot it. Very simple. Alright. So from here we can, hopefully the tree is dry. We're gonna go in and add some white. Oh, before they add the white, you can actually highlight your letters with black. I just do it all on one side. You don't have to do this part if you don't want to do this part. And again, I'm doing this very carefully because I don't want to mess up my lettering. What this is actually doing is helping me clean up some of the lines just a little bit. Okay. Once that is all done, just add a little bit more. Wash that brush off. And now I can go back to the big tree and add my Snow White. Alright, making sure my brush is completely dry. I'm just tapping it and offloading it, holding it on its side and just tapping it. Alright. I'm noticing that my tree needs a little bit more time to dry. It's still a little wet. So in the meantime, I think I'm going to add some snow to the other trees since they are already dry. You don't have to add snow to the other trees if you don't like to, but it's all up to you. So I'm holding my brush on the side and I'm just tapping, tapping, tapping. So, and I'm going out and making branches so you get them a little bit more defined. I'm turning my brush as I'm doing it. And doing that to each tree. Some trees are getting less white, some trees are getting more white. Again, we're just tapping. Alright, so now I think I'm going to add a little bit more green because I think I added too much white to this last tree. But I'll go back into that. So first I'm just adding white to these branches. And again, I'm just holding my brush to the side and kind of going the flow of the tree. I can always go back and add more white. Just want to make the branches look like they're popping out. Again, tap, tap, tap. Okay, just adding some more white where I feel like there should be some white. We're almost done. I'm going to use the back of my brush to make the lights or the ornaments on the tree. So tap, tap, tap. Your brain will kind of force you to make a pattern. As artists, we try to break away from those patterns and we just try to tap in random areas. That's perfectly fine. And then I'm going to wipe it off. And then I'm going to start doing my snow. Alright, so I'm wiping off the back of my brush. And now I'm going to go tap it in the white and do some random spots. So what I like about doing snow with the back of the brush is because as I tap, I get different size circles and I don't have to worry about making sure which ones are smaller, which ones are bigger. It kind of does it for me all on its own. And then I'm just using the smaller one. I'm just going to add some little dots to the yellow ones I just made. Just make sure those are dry first before you physically add them on so you can physically see the highlights on the yellow. Not a lot of mine are dry, so they're not really popping up right now. So then we're done, and that was the Oh Holy Night Sled tutorial. So I'm just going to glue this together right now for you guys, as you guys can see. What you kind of glue you can actually use if this is not fully assembled for you is the Gorilla Glue. I use Gorilla White Glue. And I'm just going to show you how I glue this together so you guys can see it as a whole. So I take a little bit of glue in the first half, adding a very thin layer of glue. Don't want to overdo the glue. Too much glue is not always a good thing. Less glue is. Then it's kind of like a puzzle piece, trying to fit the pieces in together. Normally we do this when the sled is completely dry. Again, a little bit of glue, fitting the puzzle pieces together. For some people, it kind of annoys them with the brown little squares, so they like to paint those in. And then for the top part, I usually like to add little dots just so that it holds, not adding too much glue. Little dots of glue here, a little dot of glue there. Then I take the top part and I attach that. I noticed I forgot to add the snow, so I'm just going to add some snow dots to the top part. And we are done, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining me, and I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. All right, guys, have a great day.